and welcome to Strider. In this quick tutorial we're going to have a look at the demo scenes, what they show us, and have a little bit of a look at the inspector to see what's going on. We're not going to really set up a character in this tutorial, that'll be for the next one, but it's very simple. I just want to convey exactly what these scenes are showing. So I'm just going to go to the Strider demo bootstrapper. Now we set this all up in the previous tutorial, so go have a look at that if you haven't already. And I'm going to hit play. Now obviously you've got a bit of information, an FAQ and an introduction to Strider. You've probably read all this already. Let's just go straight to our comparison demo. Now I made this demo so you can see directly what Strider is doing. Now the important thing to note here is that both characters are moving at the same speed. So if these characters had root motion on, or even if you're just moving them, they're actually moving at the same speed, and neither of them have foot sliding. However, this one on the left does not have Strider activated, while this one on the right does. And you can see that the one on the right is moving probably at a more natural speed, just taking bigger steps, while this one literally is just moving faster. The animation has been sped up. So if I speed it up even more, so we're now at 2.5 times the speed, and this left character here is starting to look crazy. It looks like an Energizer Bunny, it's ridiculous. Whereas our character that's using Strider on the right is just taking bigger steps. It still looks relatively natural. Now this is how we can use to fill gaps in our animation, because we can't have an animation for every single, 0.1 of a meter per second. So this goes all the way up to 3 times the speed, and you can see it's getting rather ridiculous. Now 3 times the speed is quite a lot. You probably wouldn't usually do this even with Strider. However, this is just for demonstration. So we can just move this scale down below 0 now, and you can see we're just taking smaller steps. Again, it does get to a point where even Strider looks silly, but it's better than going in slow motion, unless obviously slow motion is your goal. Maybe you got frozen or something. So play around with this and just have a look at how it changes things. I personally think that Strider looks better in just about every way. If we set it to 1, you'll see they should be exactly the same. Set that to 1. Okay, it doesn't want to set to 1. That's fine. We'll just move the slider. So they look pretty much the same here. Now we can test it out in a number of different ways. We can change the direction that we're moving, and you can see that Strider actually works in all directions. It doesn't really matter. Basically we take a direction that we want to walk the legs, and that's usually the way we're moving, the direction we're moving, and we walk along that way. So we can do it in just about any way. It works with plants and all that sort of stuff. Let's switch over to walking, and I'll just go forward again, and I'm going to scale it up, and you'll notice something different from the running here is that the character's hips are bobbing a lot more when it's walking. This is based on the stride style, and these are things that we can change in the inspector. We can dampen the amount of hips, and we can have a look at it here. We've got hip damping. If I damp the hips, it has a little less bopping, but because we're taking large steps, we kind of need that bopping so that our feet don't float in the air. That's just the nature of walking. We take bigger steps when we're walking, we're going to bop our heads a bit more. So we'll put that hip damping up a bit more. Again, this is where I'm saying we're at 2 times speed, which is quite insane, but at 1.5, even a little bit more, it still looks okay. Whereas with when you're just changing animation playback speed, you generally only can go 10% either way. Another cool thing we can do here, and these are all settings in the Strider inspectors, we can change the min and maximum playback rate. So Strider actually blends a little bit of speed up with stride, so we can set the maximum amount of speed up. So let's set that maximum to like 0.3, and then we can see we should be able to get, you can see it's actually is speeding up a little bit and doing a little bit of stride. We can just set those limits so that we never speed up the animation to a point where it's not very nice. You can also control how we blend between speed and stride, the weighting of each. So there's a whole bunch of different settings to play with here. There's also stride offset. Now this might seem ridiculous, and we're basically offsetting where the stride is. Now obviously these values I'm doing here are over the top. These are for what you should do is something really minor, like 0.2. You know, you can be walking out the front a little bit, or perhaps 0.1. This is basically just to correct if your character is, you know, retargeted badly. Some characters, when they're retargeted badly, they run all legs out in front or all legs behind. So you can use this to calibrate that better. And let's reset that to defaults. And one last thing I want to show you is we'll put the stride way up, and we can blend Strider in and out really smoothly. It's not, you don't just turn it on and off suddenly. So if I click this toggle button, you can see it blends in and out. So if we want to disable Strider at any point, there's basically a function we can call, which is called something like smooth disable and smooth enable, and we can disable the components smoothly. So that's just a nice little feature for you to see. So this is the comparison demo. It's the best way to see side on exactly what is going on with Strider. Let's take a look at another scene, and let's go to the scale scene, I think. And we get this scene, and be sure to read these things. They explain a lot of information. So we're just going to hit spawn, and it's going to spawn a 3x3 row of characters all scaled randomly. Now, these characters are all staying in sync. The smaller ones are just taking bigger steps, and the bigger ones are just taking smaller steps. And this is not really possible without Strider, because you'll notice that even the small characters, they're not, their feet aren't sliding, and neither are the big ones. So Strider is all compensating for that. And this is the stride compensation feature. Now let's turn it off and see what happens when we just use play rate. You can see the big characters, they started moving in slow motion, and the small characters started like moving fast. The problem with this is that the animation length actually shortens, meaning that our characters go out of sync. Also, the faster it is, the faster characters will turn around. So we're effectively changing our gameplay because we're changing how fast things turn. But we don't really want to do that. We want the character to speed up in movement, not in all ways. And I'm just going to respawn our characters here. And I'm going to turn compensation off completely, and we'll see what happens when we don't have any compensation. Our larger characters just go further than our smaller ones, and they can't walk together anymore. So this is really great for if you've got a character creator and you can have different sized characters, or maybe you've just got like a big character that you want to walk and move at the same speed as a small character without foot sliding. You can figure out the scale difference and apply that, and it'll allow them to walk together. So that is the size demo, and that's all explained there. Let's go now to the gameplay demo, and this is just a third-person sort of demo. Sort of like a Fortnite-esque view of a third-person character. By the way, Strider, the algorithm used for stride warping, is actually used in Fortnite. So there you go, fun little fact. This is best seen with a joystick. Now if I push slightly on the stick, you'll see that I take small steps, and as I push more on the stick, the steps get bigger, and then I transition to running small steps and then running big steps. Now I'm using a joystick to get all these in-betweens. If you don't have a gamepad, you can use your mouse and keyboard and just grab one of these speed pickups, and you can see now it takes bigger steps with the pickups. There's a little bit of feet floating in the air, but that's actually caused by not having a grounder, an IK grounder. So let's grab the slow one, and we can see it slows us down, and we just take shorter strides. And that is basically that. We can play around with this and say walk only, so we can get a real good effect of, we can really see the stride difference here, because we're only going to walk now instead of going to run. We're taking big strides, taking smaller strides, and there we go. I'm going to go to run only and test that out. Obviously it gets a little bit silly at this point, but you wouldn't ever really scale it down that much. And we can speed it up. Now let's look at what it looks like without these things. So I'll turn it off, I'll set this back to default, and we'll go to playback speed. Be sure to read these things, it gives you the disadvantages and advantages of every mode. Now you see, to achieve the same speed that I was with the stride warping, we've got this weird Energizer Bunny kind of animation. It's not very nice. If I pick up a speed boost, oh sorry, that was a slowdown. we kind of go in slow motion, and especially if I'm pushing a little bit on the stick, we go in this real slow motion, and that's not very nice. We get a speed boost, and then it's just, the animation looks terrible. The other method is we've got digital speeds. So this is a technique that people use where it's basically you're either idle, you're walking, or running. There's no speeds in between. And while that's good, there's a few disadvantages. One, you can't speed this up. You can only slow it down. So if you want anything beyond your run, if you like pick up a speed boost, you have to use play rate. You see I'm using play rate there for the upper limit. Also, it's a bit less responsive, especially if you're using a gamepad. And the next one is blended speeds. This is using a blend tree, but blend trees are not very good, and you can see why. We get this weird blend. The blends aren't very controlled, and when you blend animations, blending is destructive, especially when you're doing it with something like a strafe set. And when you do stuff like this, the root motion is messed up. It's not exactly the direction that I'm pushing on the stick, and it doesn't quite look as good as Strider. Again, if you want to speed up beyond the normal animation rate, you still have to use play rate again, because you can't blend beyond your final speed. So that's why Strider is here, and we can look way more natural. So that is that demo in a nutshell, and we'll go back to the base scene. So there we go. That is the 3 demos that come with Strider, and they're also available as a standalone binary. I hope you've got an idea of what you could use this for. I recommend going into these demos, particularly the gameplay demo. It's probably the most relevant one. Have a look at the character and the script. So I've made this gameplay demo controller. This is just to demonstrate. It's not a part of Strider. And basically within that script, I'm setting the speed scale. I'm setting this slider at runtime to tell it what speed I want to go, instead of telling the animator what speed I want to go. So usually you would tell the animator if it was just playback rate. Here we're telling Strider how fast we want to go, and Strider will say, okay, well, I'm going to tell the animator I want to go this much fast, just a little bit, and then it also scales the stride and it scales the root motion in the background for you. So that's the demos. Thank you all for watching. I'll see you in the next video where we will actually set up a character with Strider in a basic way. Thanks for watching.